Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up on the program. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres commemorates the 80th anniversary of the organization, outlining its achievements. US President Donald Trump sets out his vision for the world in a UN address, his first since 2020. Plus, Israel slams French President Emmanuel Macron's recognition of a Palestinian state. Let's begin The World Today. The 80th anniversary of the UN General Assembly has begun in earnest and at the headquarters of the UN in New York. Late Monday, Secretary General Antonio Guterres and President of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, highlighted this year's theme, Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development and human rights. Ms. Baerbock said the gathering should not only be remembered for its milestone, but as a moment when it called on extraordinary resolve equal to the extraordinary challenges. Mr. Guterres highlighted the milestone year in his address.
This is why this is the theme of this 80th session, Better Together. It's more than a hot motto. It's a hard-won truth. It's our commitment for the next 80 years. Our commitment to not only hope for problems to vanish, but to find the courage to confront them. Better Together means to act where action is hard, to choose dialogue and diplomacy when division is easier. Hope at this 80th anniversary means that this session is not remembered not only for its milestone year, but as a moment when we called on extraordinary resolve equal to the extraordinary challenges we face. We owe this to the people, to the men and women, boys and girls who are not giving up, even in the darkest hours of war, who look still to the streaming blue flag for hope, the flag of our United Nations. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together.
Peace is the most courageous, the most practical, the most necessary pursuit of all. We must not only defend the United Nations, we must strengthen it. And that is the purpose of Agenda 2030, the Pact for the Future and the UN80 initiative, to renew the foundations of international cooperation and to ensure that we can deliver for people everywhere.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and President of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock. Well, as for US President Donald Trump, today he addressed the United Nations General Assembly, his first time since 2020, calling it his vision for the world. President Trump declared it was time to end what he called the failed experiment of open borders, accusing the UN of facilitating an invasion of Western countries. He criticized Europe over migration and energy dependence on Russia, saying it was embarrassing. On climate change, President Trump described it as the greatest con job ever and said the United Nations predictions were wrong. He also reiterated his position that recognizing a Palestinian state would reward Hamas for atrocities, urging the group to release hostages immediately. Trump claimed he had even ended 7 wars since his return to the White House and criticized the UN for not even trying to find solutions. He's expected to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky later today, with sanctions against Russia high on the agenda.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. and then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
U.S. President Donald Trump speaking at the United Nations General Assembly at the Great Debate earlier today. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, President Donald Trump's words, his vision for the world, perhaps some might consider it the most rude address he's made to world leaders in a long time. A lot of patting on the back, you'll notice, with some of the things he said. He stopped 7 wars. He expected a thank you from the United Nations. He got none. And then he says, empty words do not stop wars, only actions do. Some of the things that he said, though, he claims the UN facilitated the invasion of Western countries. I mean, break this down for us, Maria. What has been the reaction to what Trump has said?
Well, if you look at what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was saying prior to the General Assembly, you could see that there was going to be some sort of a communication and address. As you mentioned, not since 2020 that we have seen the president address the UN General Assembly. And so when you look at what was being said prior to this assembly, we knew the president was not completely happy with, and that there would be some very harsh stance from the U.S. And so I think that the stance that he has positioned and what he has been stating over these last few minutes, and I think Americans are still trying to figure out and to respond to this. But this was definitely something that the Secretary of State kind of
Maria? Oh dear, we do seem to have lost connection with our correspondent, Maria Bird. We will try to reconnect with her to continue that conversation. But while leaders are meeting in New York, Israeli forces have pushed deeper into Gaza City. Tanks and armored vehicles reportedly now moving into the city's center. The ongoing assault has destroyed large blocks of housing. It's also forced several residents to flee. The intensified offensive comes as President Trump delivered his speech to the UN General Assembly. France joined the UK, Canada, and Australia in formally recognizing a Palestinian state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected the decision, declaring there will be no Palestinian state. The world leaders have been calling for urgent diplomatic and humanitarian action over the situation in Gaza. During a high-level conference at the UN, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez proposed full UN membership for Palestine and immediate measures to halt the violence, warning that history will judge those who remain silent. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen highlighted the EU's financial support to the Palestinian Authority, announcing a new instrument for Gaza's reconstruction. Qatar and the UAE also joined in condemning Israel's campaign, calling for a clear roadmap towards an independent Palestinian state.
Since the beginning of this war, Europe has been the lifeline of the Palestinian Authority. We have put together an unmatched and unprecedented financial package of 1.6 billion euros. But as the very survival of the Palestinian Authority is at stake, we must all do more. And this is why we will set up a Palestine donor group. Any future Palestinian state must be viable, also from the economic point of view. And this can be achieved also with the support of the Palestinians' neighbors. We Europeans will set up a dedicated instrument for Gaza's reconstruction in coordination with other donors' efforts. Gaza must be rebuilt, the Palestinian economy must be relaunched.
The unbearable humanitarian catastrophe worsens as the Netanyahu government chooses to escalate war and hold back aid. Children dying of starvation while food rots at the border. And settlement expansion threatens the very viability of a Palestinian state. The two-state solution risks disappearing beneath the rubble. That is what extremists on all sides want, but we refuse to let hope be lost. Recognition is born of urgency and principle.
So Israel's representative to the UN, Danny Danon, slammed countries recognizing Palestine's statehood, calling the French president Emmanuel Macron, who made his announcement earlier this week, theater detached from reality. Danon accused President Macron and his allies of supporting terrorism, warning that their statements do nothing to change conditions for Palestinians or improve Israeli security. He argued the recognition is an empty declaration and insisted that Israel had already withdrawn from Gaza in 2005, only to face the October 7 attacks. We have reconnected with our correspondent, Maria Bird, in Washington. Maria, speaking of this recognition of Palestine as a state, a number of countries done so already this week. President Trump still sides with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The recognition will be a reward for Hamas. Do other American leaders feel that way?
Well, unfortunately, the U.S. has been very split on this issue for many years. This is not new to the Trump administration. We know the president has stood in alignment with Israel, as have previous administrations and presidents in the United States, and that has been a long-standing friendship between the two countries. Now, we also know that our previous vice president was very clear as to her position on Palestine, and there are various other senators and congressional members that do believe that there should be some sort of an acknowledgement of a Palestinian state. And so this is one that is very politically motivated, is very divisive amongst members, and obviously, and many Americans are also very divided on this. We have a very large Palestinian population here in the United States, and those who truly support Palestinians. And obviously, we know there's humanitarian issues, and that has been something that I think America has been very clear on, regardless of where they stand on the political end of things. They've been very clear that the humanitarian issues are ones that they are working toward and trying to provide support to address those humanitarian challenges.
Right. And another topic the president highlighted on one of his favorite, I would say, climate change. He called it the greatest con job ever. The U.S. was privy to that COP26 conference in Glasgow, where temperatures were set at 1.5 degrees Celsius. Does this mean, though, that under the Trump administration, U.S. commitment to curbing climate change and climate agreements will be suspended for now?
Yes, we saw this in the previous Trump administration, that there was a very different position on climate change. We were removed from various pacts that addressed climate change globally, and we took a very different stance. And we're just seeing the same sort of stance from this administration with President Trump, that he has a very different position. We know that he has been trying to bring back manufacturing, and we know that many of the manufacturing industries in the U.S. here do impact pollution efforts. And so his position on climate change is very different than our previous administration.
A lot to unpack with President Trump's address. Maria, thanks again for checking in with us. We do have our correspondents on the ground who will be getting more from them a lot later. But staying with the General Assembly, though, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has responded to France's official declaration of recognition for a Palestinian state. He called on UN member states to follow suit, saying that the two-state solution is the only solution to the crisis in the region.
attacks by Hamas. This is a moment of great significance, not only for the people of Palestine, not only for the people of Israel, but for all people who cherish the ideals of freedom and self-determination. Shortly after the United Nations was created, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, which recommended the creation of two states, Israel and Palestine. Immediately after the adoption of this resolution, only one state was created, the State of Israel, casting and ushering the Palestinians into a decades-long wilderness of statelessness, characterized by decades of occupation and now genocide. I'd like to congratulate the President of France, President Macron, for today announcing a very bold decision to support the long overdue creation and the recognition of the sovereign state of Palestine. President Macron, I stand here to congratulate you and to congratulate others who have taken this step. South Africa reiterates its firm commitment to the creation of a contiguous Palestinian state existing peacefully side by side with the State of Israel along the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. South Africa condemned the 7th October attacks by Hamas that resulted in the deaths of more than 1,200 people. In response to this attack, Israel has unleashed disproportionate punishment against the people of Palestine. And we say here today that the only solution to this conflict is a two-state solution. The viability of a two-state solution depends on full and universal respect for international law. All states, including the State of Israel, must comply with the collective obligations under international law. As the UN marks the 80th anniversary, we call on all member states to recognize Palestine and to act in solidarity with its people.
The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima is also at the UN General Assembly. Just a while ago, he showcased Nigeria's $200 billion energy transition opportunity to investors, emphasizing the need for partnerships to maximize the multifaceted, multi-billion investment opportunities across the country. Our State House correspondent Larry Lasisi is with the Vice President's entourage.
This special gathering taking place in the United Nations headquarters is a ceremony to mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. Vice President Kashim Shettima joined other heads of government for a short ceremony to commemorate the event. He was accompanied by some ministers and aides. United Nations Secretary General, giving the opening remarks of the occasion, emphasized the ever-present need for the founding principles of the Union.
To meet these challenges, we must not only defend the United Nations, we must strengthen it. And that is the purpose of Agenda 2030, the Pact for the Future and the UN80 initiative, to renew the foundations of international cooperation and to ensure that we can deliver for people everywhere.
Afterwards, the Vice President represented President Bola Tinubu at a roundtable organized by the Business Council for International Understanding, which took place on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly.
I want you to continue believing in Nigeria because the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa, and Nigeria will make or mar that transition. Of the 10 unicorns in Africa, About 8 are in Nigeria. Name some of them for me: Andela, Plutaweb, Moneypoint, Jumia, Opay. That's where the action is. Why do you have to go and waste your resources? Come to Nigeria. Our doors are open for business. We are ready for action.
Other events took place on the sidelines too. At one of such meetings, the Minister of Environment spoke on the need for investments to ensure forest landscape restoration.
Policy is going to address 3 main issues. Number one is trying to reduce deforestation, and secondly is going to actually assist in the health of our rural women particularly. And at the same time, we're going to build business around that, because many people are now being encouraged to go into the production of cooking stuff.
A very busy day for the Nigerian delegation on the first day of what will be a very, very busy week. And it's only going to get busier. For Tuesday, it's going to turn out to be the first day for the General Assembly and to hear world leaders speak, and would be expecting more meetings will also be happening. From New York, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
And as we end the program, China has evacuated hundreds of thousands of people as the strongest storm of the year bears down on its southern coast. Hong Kong has raised its typhoon warning to level 8, just 2 shy of the maximum ahead of Super Typhoon Gaza. The storm is expected to make a landfall in Guangdong province on Wednesday. Authorities say more than 370,000 people have already been evacuated, warning of a catastrophic situation. We're praying that everything goes well for them. Thanks for watching The World Today. I am Amarachi Ubani.